Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG podcast. This is episode number 35, and I am Ramon Mejia. I'm here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and of course, author interviews. Now, this week in new releases and reviews, I'll be talking about Dungeon Madness, Travail Online Soulkeeper, BladeDust Online, and Viridian Gate Online, Crimson Alliance. That's the second book in that series. But of course, we're going to be in our show, though, with LitRPG news. And in LitRPG news, we're going to be with two new Audible releases from the LitRPG genre. Luck Strategy, Seekers of the Old Ones, is out on audiobook right now. It is narrated by Jeff Hayes, who we recently interviewed. It's $13.08 as of this broadcast, and it is 4 hours and 45 minutes long. Now, I enjoyed the ebook version of this. I like Jeff Hayes' many voice talents, and I'm going to play a small sample just so you can decide if you'd like to pick up this as an audiobook or not.
An explosive crossbow bolt detonated on the ground outside, throwing dirt and rocks through the open windows. "Why are you here, though?" asked Vale. "Why do you want to help?"
"I was bored and I don't have a group."
Abigail shrugged.
"You seemed interesting. Now, are you going to get your happy ass forward to steer this thing, or are you going to keep looking like a fish out of water? I really thought you'd be cooler than this."
Vale was already on the outside of the stagecoach and halfway to the driver's seat when he paused for a second. "What the hell am I doing?" This girl was dangerous. He was weak against her. She'd just ordered him around and he'd done what she said. Plus, she was one of those weirdo steampunk players. Nobody understood those people.
And of course, you can listen to that a little bit longer. There's a much longer sample on Audible if you want to go click on it and check it out. We'll have a link in the show notes for you to do. But again, I like the ebook, and the voices work for me. Okay, the other audiobook from the LitRPG genre that has been released recently, it was actually found by a listener of the show on the podcast, Ihab Lachir. I'm probably saying that name wrong, but he knows who we talked. We've talked a couple times. This is an audiobook for Difficulty Legendary, written by Greg Horlack. Now, it's also read by Guy Williams. It is 2 hours, 57 minutes for $5.95. So it's a little bit pricey for the amount that you get. But hey, I'm not a huge fan of the ebook version of the story. I gave a review of it a while ago, and I found the main character to be kind of whiny, and it to be a very short story, so short that nothing actually important happens. Now, I'm a bigger fan of the second book. That one had a much better pace, much longer length, where things actually had an opportunity to occur, where the character had a progression. But if you're in a need for a LitRPG audiobook, I would say go listen to a sample and decide for yourself if this is something you wish to invest your funds in. It's not super expensive. I wouldn't use like an Audible credit on it though. Okay, more LitRPG news. Alaron Kong's first book, The Land Founding, is free. It's right, FREE. Currently, go pick it up if you haven't already. It's a great beginning of a long series. But I'm thinking if you listen to this podcast, you've probably already listened to that series. But in case you haven't, it's free. Even if you have listened to it on Kindle or Reddit, I should say, go pick it up anyways. It's just nice, and it's free. Okay, speaking of Alaron Kong, he has actually organized the LitRPG Gala that's going to be happening on September the 2nd, 2017 in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, this is the second annual LitRPG Gala. The first one was last year, same time. It's essentially a time and place for people around the world to come and gather and talk about LitRPG. It's actually on the Saturday of DragonCon. Alaron, this is the second time Alaron has done this. It's at the same place, the Sidebar in Atlanta, Georgia, from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. on September the 2nd, 2017. Again, it's a Saturday of DragonCon. So if you happen to be in the area for DragonCon anyways, or if you want to drive down for that, there it is. I'll have a link in the show notes for the actual address. It's on meetup.com, the place that it's being organized around. So if you want to go there and RSVP, so he has a head count for like how many beers he's going to buy for everybody. That'd be nice. But again, we'll have a link in the show notes for that. But again, I personally plan to attend this year. I've already purchased my pass for DragonCon. I just have to make arrangements for, hotel and airfare and stuff. But halfway there, Okay, hopefully we'll see you there. Also, in other interesting LitRPG news, how would you like to see a Critical Failures digital series? Well, there's an Indiegogo campaign going on right now looking to make that happen. Gabriel Kunitz optioned the film rights to Critical Failures a few months ago, and it is currently being not kickstarted, but crowdfunded on Indiegogo to raise the money to produce the episodic digital series for that property. The campaign currently has, as of this recording, $2,135 of their $50,000 goal. So they're part the way there, but they can use a lot more help. There are some really cool rewards if you want to back them, including art, t-shirts, a Skype call with the author and producer. But if you want the very best reward, you're going to have to shell out $3,000. And for your $3,000, they're going to reward you with a dinner with Robert Bevan, the author of Critical Failures, and the producer of the digital series at the Olive Garden. That's right, folks, the Olive Garden. $3,000. But to be fair, a two-way ticket, a flight to and back, and a 2-night stay at a hotel is also included. I just think it's a really interesting, high-priced reward at the Olive Garden. It very much is in line with the sense of humor for Robert Bevan. So, go back them if you're interested in seeing Critical Failures as a digital series. Okay, in other LitRPG news, Edward Castle, author of the Unbound Deathlord series, has stated on his Patreon page that he should be done with the second book in that series in about a month, barring, catastrophic failures. He's also changed the title from Warmonger to Unbound Deathlord Obliteration. So there you go. We'll have a link in the show notes for his Patreon page if you, of course, want to go back on that as well. Okay. Next, Mitchell Jacobs, author of the World at War Online series, is planning to release a new LitRPG novel called Soul Link Origin. It should come out sometime in March, according to the author. I'm going to read you the synopsis for the series. Ellie Kirkland wakes up to find herself trapped in a strange new world alongside 100,000 others, with no memory of how she got there. Dumped into an isolated valley with few resources at their disposal, the newcomers must quickly find a way to survive this harsh new reality that mimics so many games they have played before. It kind of sounds like a LitRPG survival story, which is kind of cool if that's what it is. But again, if you're not sure if this is going to be a thing for you, the author is very kindly allowing you to read the first 5 chapters as a sample on their page at Ziffo Press. That's going to be ZIPHOSPRES.com. We'll have a link in the show notes for you to go click on and find the first 5 chapters to see if it's going to be your kind of book. Okay, also, we have some great cover art release from Matt Dinneman. Matt Dinneman is the author of The Grinding, which is a zombie apocalypse novel, and also The Shivered Sky, which is a heaven and hell novel. This is going to be his first LitRPG story, and the cover art looks kind of cool. Honestly, I'm only talking about this is because I like the cover art. I'm a real sucker for cover arts. He says that it's going to be available in April once his editors are done with it, but it's very pretty cover art, which is why it's here. There you go. I'm a sucker for pretty things. Okay. Also, Daniel Shinhoffen. He's the author of the Lost Horizon series, which I'm a huge fan of. The second book in that series, brought a tear to my eye. He has a new LitRPG series called Alpha World. Book 1 is going to be available on February the 28th, 2017. There is no pre-order available, so you're going to have to wait the week-ish to get it. Okay, Glitch Fiends, Part 1, which is actually the second book in the Hell's Glitch series. If you don't remember this at all, I'm not surprised. Honestly, it's been a really long time since it came out. This is the one that I kind of compare to a Dark Souls LitRPG novel. I liked it. It's a little darker though than what you might be used to. It's going to be out on March the 1st. It is available pre-order. We'll have a link in the show notes. Okay. Next, Press X to Loot, The Scout of Artemis. This is another book from Greg Harlock. He's the author of the Difficult Legendary series, which we just talked about a little bit. Now, in this story, the main character, Chris, joins the latest VR game for a chance to win the money he needs to save his family business. All he has to do is find one little item. Only he's competing against hordes of other players, fighting vicious monsters, and has to survive all that the game throws at him. It's out now. It's actually going to be reviewed by myself next week. So there you go, folks. That's it for LitRPG news. I'm going to read you a list of the upcoming LitRPGs, and we'll get right into our reviews. Okay, upcoming LitRPG. For the Guild, Book 3 in the Marilia series, out February 27th. Spitznauts, a permadeath LitRPG LitHeart FPS series, out February the 28th. Alpha World Book 1, Gamer for Life, out February the 28th, 2017. Galactic Fist of Legend Volume 2, out February 7, sometime in February, I should say. We also have The Glitch Fiends, Part 1, which we just talked about, out March 1st. Crystal Sphere is going to be out March 10th again. The Shadow of the Great Forest, which is the 4th book in the Realm of Archon series, out March the 14th. Awaken Online Precipice will be out March 31st. And sometime in March, Delvers LLC, Obligation Incurred will be out. Earth Tactics Advanced Volume 1 will be out. And Soul Link Origin, also out sometime in March. So there you go, folks. On to new releases and reviews. Okay, new releases and reviews, folks. We got 4 reviews to go through today. Full disclosure, though, I got advanced review copies of Travail Online and Viridian Gate Online, Crimson Alliance, and honestly, I'm really glad that I did. It's been a busy week. I've been trying to write as much as possible in my next book in my series. I'm not sure I would have been able to review all 4 books if I hadn't got a little advanced preparation done for them. I have, of course, purchased all of everything that I've got an advanced copy for once it came out on Amazon. Okay, we're going to begin with Dungeon Madness, The Divine Dungeon, Book 2. Written by Dakota Kraut, friend of the podcast. Okay, it is 346 pages. It is $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Now, this is Dakota Kraut's second book in this series, and it has had an amazing success online. It's garnered 3 number 1 positions in different categories on Amazon. It's even broken into the top 100 on Amazon's paid books. So just right off the bat, I want to tell Dakota, congratulations. Good job. Real proud. And of course, I had a chance to talk to Dakota before the book actually dropped. We did a second author interview. You can catch it on our website at litrpgpodcast.com or geekbystepodcast.com. They go to the same place. Okay, now my opinion of it. This is a wonderful sequel to Dungeonborn. Now remember, in Dungeonborn, that's a story of a human being killed and turning into a dungeon core. And with the help of a dungeon wisp named Danny, the dungeon cow, creates a dungeon for adventurers to delve into. Now, if they survive the traps and monsters, these adventurers get treasure. And if they don't, Cow gets more essence to live and to grow. Now, in the second book in the series, the town that is sprouted up around the dungeon continues to grow, and Dale, the guy that owns the land, is forced to take a more direct role in its management. Now, some of the things that I really loved about the story are the new relationship between Dale, the human, and Cal, the dungeon. One of the few flaws I kind of had in the last book was the limited dialogue options for the dungeon itself. Cal is a very interesting character. He has personality. He has a very special way of looking at the world as a dungeon. Very different from what normal human society would deem as acceptable. But he could only ever talk to his wisp, Danny. And I felt that was really limiting to the story. But of course, that's been solved. Cal can now talk to Dale and an additional person, which I won't spoil for anybody. But it adds a lot more depth and dialogue options for the dungeon itself. So, big plus for me. Now, it's also interesting to see the expansion of the dungeon, new traps, monsters, all big pluses. But it's also interesting to see how Dale has to kind of step up and take a leadership position for his dungeon town. And he can't just let other people run the show anymore because they're kind of taking advantage and almost trying to push him out of the land he owns. There's a huge fight battle in the story, and it's super exciting, and there are tons of believable consequences for things that happen in the story, which I can't spoil. I just realized, but this is a great story. I devoured it in a couple sittings. It was really that good. I give it an easy 8 out of 10. So big recommend. Okay, on to Travail Online, Soulkeeper, Book 1, written by Brian Simmons. Okay, this book is 236 pages. It is $2.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Okay, this is the story of, well, it's a couple different people in the story, but the main character is Coral. She's been fired from her job, replaced by a robot. It's set into the near future. Like just about everybody in the United States, apparently, their the manual labor workforce in the United States and around the world is being replaced by robots. So it's not too out there, not too speculative. But to make ends meet, she starts to play the full immersion virtual reality game Travail Online, where she can convert in-game gold earned to real-world dollars. Now, she chooses to be a crafter in the story, which I like. It's interesting and different. Specifically, she wants to become a seamstress. Now, on her first day, she kind of looks into a group of high-level players looking for a fourth person to run an instance raid. There, she lands the killing blow on the boss, somehow getting all the experience points, jumping to level 18, and getting a new quest to design armor that will protect the army from a magical artifact that's perma-killing both NPCs and players. So that's kind of the premise. I'll say this, it's an interesting premise. In a world gone robotic, hey, you got to make a living somewhere. Now the story it's very charming. I'll give it that. I liked reading about Coral and the fact that she didn't choose a combat-oriented class. The other high-level player characters, there are 3 of them, and they're the other characters. Dale, which is the other biggest personality in the story, he's kind of a jerk, but he kind of redeems himself, which is good. And the relationship between those 4 characters is kind of the highlight of the story for me. Unfortunately, there's some very serious logic issues that I had with the story. Things that weren't really consistent. Like, for example, in the game where the whole point is to make money, exchanging gold for real US dollars, that the exchange rate wasn't always constant. It's supposed to be 10 gold for $1. Now, this is sometimes referred to very differently. Like 50 gold coins is sometimes referred to as 50 cents. Sometimes that's $5. It's a small thing, but it kind of illustrates really quickly that this game world isn't quite consistent and logical sometimes. Another big issue for me was that why is a high-level raid in a beginner zone, which is where Coral is at? It doesn't make sense to me. Why would high-level players grab a level 1 person to group with? Isn't there a group funding feature in this super advanced game that they could use? And to me, a raid is not for people, by the way. It is like 6 to 10 or 30 people. It's a big thing, small things like that. Also, why does Carol get all the XP from killing the boss? I mean, either the group experience is not enabled, and is it turned off, or is she not actually in the group? In which case, I question, how does she get into the dungeon? I mean, there are a lot of these kind of questions for me that don't make sense as far as like a game mechanic aspect of the story. And to be honest, this lack of logic for me kind of almost made me put the book down, because for me, in a LitRPG, the game world has to make sense. It's very much along as like, if I played a video game and it was frustrating and it didn't make sense to me, why would I play it? And it's very much the same line of thinking for these LitRPG stories. If the game world and the game mechanics don't have all their pieces fitting together, or if they just don't make sense to my gamer brain, it hurts. I almost burn a bulb out or something. It's just kind of when my brain works. But I read the whole story. I didn't put it down, and I'm sort of glad I did. I mean, after the 30% mark of the story, when the story setup is finished, things kind of improve. If I just ignore the game logic issues, it really isn't half bad. Sometimes the story gets a little meandering. Things don't go in a linear fashion at all. Like I honestly feel like you could have gone from the setup to the very end of it, and you really could have been cool. Like the story kind of just goes different places and they're adventures. And really that's kind of it. My biggest issue with the story is that the game world isn't that interesting. It's kind of boring. When it was just a story of 4 friends going on adventures and having a good time, that was probably when it was at its best. And that's kind of my review for it. It's there are funny interactions with the characters, but overall it's just not that interesting to me, unfortunately. So it gets a 5 out of 10 for me for Travail Online Soulkeepers. It's kind of meh. So 5 out of 10. There you go. Okay, on to BladeDust Online, written by Corey Thompson. We have it at 358 pages. It is $3.99, at least until February the 28th. And then it'll go up to its normal price of $4.99. It is also available on Kindle Unlimited. Okay, summarized premise. 2 guys, Cody and his roommate Tommy, are unemployed students that can't make their next rent payment. So they decide to try and make some money playing a popular full immersion game called BladeDust Online. They jump into the game ill-prepared to find themselves trapped when a glitch removes the logout button. There you go. That's the premise. Now I'm going to divide the review into 2 parts. I'll describe and comment on the first half of the novel, and then I'll talk about the second half, because they almost feel like very different stories. Now, the first 50% of the book, bad. Can't describe it better, unfortunately. The premise itself is not bad. It's not even unusual. I've read it before, so it's not an uncommon premise. Unfortunately, the story very quickly veers away from that. It never really seems to matter that they aren't making money in the story. And they never transfer that money to the real world. Heck, they never even go back to the real world in the rest of the novel. So the setup really just ultimately doesn't matter. It kind of turns into this story of, have you ever seen the movie Bill and Ted, Excellent Adventures, or like Beavis and Butthead? Those are the 2 guys, the main characters. And I almost describe it as Bill and Ted's not so excellent LitRPG journey. And for me, like, the sense of humor really does play into that kind of deadpan storyline, and it's okay. But the character choices, the choices actually the characters make, are not okay. Like, the humor is cool. That's probably one of the highlights of the story. But in the entire first half of the novel, things just happen to these unusually dumb main characters. They don't actually have any. They don't do anything themselves. They'll let around by their noses by a series of players that take advantage of them and occasionally explain a game mechanic or 2. And speaking of which, the game mechanics don't make sense here either. There's a weirdly odd death system that turns players into ghosts. They'll have to get other players to resurrect them with a very expensive potion. But if they don't get resurrected, then bad players can actually harvest their souls and send them to a virtual soul work camp or something. It's really complicated, and it all doesn't make sense. I feel like there could have been better ways to implement a death penalty, and it would have done better. This is just weird. And again, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, I've actually spoken to the author a little bit. And he said he intended to slowly reveal the game mechanics to the world as if it were a hardcore survival game, which really sounds cool. Unfortunately, that's not really what happens here. This is presented as a fantasy RPG, so there are some very different expectations to like a survival story. And there's really a big difference between slowly revealing game mechanics and not revealing them at all, or not explaining them at all. For example, again, it's never really explained what the character's stats do. Why is there sneak and persuasion as stats, but there isn't something like constitution? There's a strength characteristic, intelligence, but there's no constitution. But instead, there's sneak and persuasion, which to me seem like skills, not stats. Additionally, at one point, the main characters are advised to raise an army of NPCs, but it's never explained why that's important at all. They do it, the army is destroyed, and it never comes up again, really. There are also classes that the characters take, but they don't do anything. They're never explored. You never get special class abilities or special class skills or, special class bonuses. It's just in the character creation screen, somebody has to choose a class, and then it's kind of forgotten and not spoken about again. I mean, I could go on and on, but you get the idea. So the game world isn't really fleshed out here either. Now, that's the first half of the book. Second half of the book, not that bad actually. It's actually pretty decent. This in the second half of the book is when the story kind of comes into its own. The main character Cody is separated from his roommate Tommy and sold off as a gladiator on some virtual reality island. The story really turns into a revenge-seeking gladiatorial battle as Cody becomes determined to gain power and strength to kill the player that betrayed him and sold him into slavery. His name is Cosmo. And at this point, it feels like the story found its purpose. There's a reason for Cody to do stuff, and he actually has the impetus to go out and quest on his own. And even though the quests don't relate directly to the that main motivation, sometimes you can tell, okay, he's just doing these things to get more powerful. So at least there's like this flowing theme of like purpose for the characters, as opposed to just them wandering around aimlessly in the first half of the story. So there you go. That's kind of it. I give the first half of the story a 4 out of 10. No recommendation. Not good. Second half gets a 6 out of 10. It's actually quite a ways bit better, and I actually liked it a little bit. But again, it's not really too much better above average. Overall, if you average out those two scores, 5 out of 10. So there you go. Now, if you want to actually read this story, I'd really recommend that you just skip right to the middle 50% half and go from there. And you'll probably like it better. Okay. One more to go, folks. It's been a long episode, I know, but this one is good. Viridian Gate Online, Crimson Alliance by J.A. Hunter. Okay, this is the second book in the Viridian Gate Online series. It is 272 pages according to Amazon. However, the author says that the novel is actually 90,000 words, and it should be closer to 349 pages, but Amazon listed as 272. It is $4.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Now, in book one, the series the story is a lot smaller. It's really almost an individual story about the main character, Jack. We follow his journey through this virtual reality world. As he becomes a shadowmancer, he gains those cool abilities to manipulate shadows, the shadow world itself, and that's mostly what the story is about. There's some other points in there where there's a revelation of a shadow conspiracy. He gets a special faction seal in book one. And those are kind of the main plot points there. But it's very much a story about Jack, his companion, and that conspiracy thing kind of being revealed. Now, in book two, the real world is finally ending. That was one of the plot points that almost didn't matter in book one. The real world is ending, which is why Jack goes into the virtual world. He downloads his mind there so he can live there permanently. And in book two, the world kind of just finally ends. So that part's done and out of the way with. And larger city faction building elements of the world are finally revealed. So we actually get a larger story in book two, which to me is a good thing. It very much goes, I mean, there's still stories for Jack and his quest and adventures and stuff, but there's also a larger story about the community he's trying to build there. There are some, of course, city building aspects, community building stuff. There's also the implementation of crafting, designing weapons, commerce, diplomacy, and those are the things that I think make book two a little bit better. One of the bigger complaints, or one of the few complaints I should say for book one that I had, was that the world felt empty-ish. Like, I got the story of Jack, I got the story of the conspiracy, I got all his class and quest, and I thought that was really cool. But the larger world of Viridian Online felt empty. Like at the end of the story, I couldn't remember anything about the world itself. I couldn't remember cities. I couldn't remember graphical descriptions of it. So none of that made an impression on me in book one. And in book two, that was different. Like the author introduced a lot of descriptive language about the area that the city is in. I can see in my mind very clearly major temples, character areas, because the city building stuff, it takes on more importance there as this community is trying to build itself to survive against all these larger, bad people elements trying to kill them or are going to kill them at some point. That is fleshed out more. So that made it a much fuller world to me, and it's better. I liked it quite a bit. So I enjoyed book two more than book one. Of course, Jack grows in his power. He gets new abilities, and all that's really cool. But the biggest improvement in the story is probably just the world building aspect of it. So it's an improvement for me. I give Viridian Gate Online, Crimson Alliance, a 7 out of 10. So there we go. That's it. We're done, folks. It's a longish episode. Lots of LitRPG news, lots of reviews, but we are finished. Okay. Remember, folks, if you enjoy the podcast and you want to support it, remember to like us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We'll have a link in the show notes for all those places, of course. Of course, you can also support us on Patreon if you wish to. And of course, all the ways you can support the podcast are going to be listed at litrpgpodcast.com/support. Okay, thanks a lot for hanging out with me, everybody. I had a really good time talking about this thing that I love with you, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me do it. And until we can hang out again, ladies and gentlemen, remember, go read some LitRPG.